So, despite being one of the slowest readers you could probably ever meet, I managed to finish reading The Long Walk before it was released. Look how pristine it still looks. Carrying it around in my book bag, even going to work, and it still looks, it's a little rough, but not too bad. It's how I take care of books. All right, so I'm going to do an unusual review. It's going to be short. First of all, the premise of the book. I'm just going to give as much information as you can really glean from the trailer. First of all, I like to read books before movies come out because what ends up happening from my experiences, the books will give you information that helps you understand the movie, give details that although they may be alluded to the book, they're not actually fully explained. Great example, although they deviate ridiculously a lot, is The Shining. The dude in the dog bear costume. It's explained in the book, although the stories deviate hugely. So, dystopian present future. The book was actually written around, I believe, 1966, from 66 to 67, when he started writing it when he was 19, but it wasn't published until 79. Interestingly enough, it's King's first book that he wrote, but his first book that was published was Carrie, which I think he wrote in 1974. So anyway, it's I guess it's supposed to take place, I guess at the time, you kind of get the hits, probably in the future, because there's some technology in the book that I guess would not have existed at the time when King was writing it. There's also some kind of hints that maybe history deviated from our timeline, at least in World War II, for the U.S. to arrive to what it is in this novel. Stephen King doesn't really explain it, and you almost have to kind of read between the lines to even pick up on it. So young men, they volunteer, and then they're selected from this pool to participate in this contest where they walk. And the last person standing wins. And if you stop walking, you're shot down. So they're being trailed by soldiers. Also, the book and the movie, I can tell one deviation right away. It's what I call the 80 horror movie trope of old-ass teenagers. This is a thing they even do now with teenagers, but it seemed to be especially bad in the 80s. I mean, they do this now with teenagers in horror movies, but it seemed to be especially bad in the 80s, where you have 30-year-old high school seniors. But in the book, these are teenagers, and their ages seem to be, I don't know how young they get. I think they do mention, I think some of them may be like barely teenagers, and some of them are older teenagers. But I know that the actors they have playing these characters in the movies, I think I know for a fact that some of them are in their 30s. So maybe it softens the blow, even if the movie tells us they're supposed to be teenagers, I'm assuming it does. Seeing a 30-year-old being murdered, pretending to be a teenager, is not as visceral as seeing a 13-year-old who actually is a 13-year-old being brutally murdered on film. It's why we can say the kids at Camp Crystal Lake had it coming, because, yeah, they're horny teenagers, but they're horny teenagers being played by people in their late 40s. When you're reading a book, it's definitely helpful to know when the book was written and who wrote it, to have some background of the book itself, because knowing when the book was written, the allegory to Vietnam becomes very clear. Is it a good book? Yes, that's going to be my review. Yes, it is a good book. It's depressing as hell. Stephen King wrote this under the Richard Bachman pseudonym. To my understanding, he wrote 3 other books under the Richard Bachman pseudonym. I think 3 other books. I know he wrote The Running Man under that name, and a book called Rage, which I think is about a school shooting. And I can't remember the other book, but I know he wrote at least 4 books. I've read The Running Man, and what this book and The Running Man have in common compared to other Stephen King books I've read. And this may be an odd thing to say about Stephen King, but a lot of the ending of Stephen King books are surprisingly hopeful. In fact, I would say that the books are often more hopeful than the movie adaptations. There's tragedy in them, but there's also like a hope. The Bachman books, they're bleak. However, I will say this. If you, assuming that the book and the movie follow closely, which I think they will, fairly close, if you're going to go watch this with a group of your friends, and I've kind of seen this much from the trailer, it's going to be very gory. It's going to have it's going to have some gore in it. It's going to have some disturbing violence. And you're going to walk out of that theater feeling kind of sad. It's kind of like years ago when a group of my friends wanted to rent the movie The Road, based on the Cormac McCarthy novel. And I'd already read the novel. And this was like me and 4 other people. And they're just like, hey, it's a Friday night, let's rent a movie. And I warned them, I'm like, guys, I haven't seen this movie. But if it follows the book, it's going to be depressing as hell. And after we finish watching it, they're looking at me like, wow, why did you let us watch that? And I was like, I warned y'all. And that's what I'm kind of saying about this book.